This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Welcome to Usapang Bayan. Ako po si George Chua kasama ang aking co-host na si Rach Marquez. Pag-uusapan po natin ang mga mahahalagang pangyayari at issue na kinaharap ng ating bansa.
Makakasama po natin sa gabing ito ang Chairman ng British Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Chris Nelson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well,
Great to be here.
We're glad to have you here with us, Chris, and I've personally known Chris for a long time when he was first still involved as the president of Philip Morris and then eventually PMFTC. And Chris also sits with us in the board of the Federation of Philippine Industries. And he also sits in the board of a number of other Philippine companies, such as Philippine National Bank.
Correct.
So maybe before I talk more about yourself, we'll let you do the talking. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your background, why you happen to be in the Philippines, and maybe a little bit about the history of the British Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines?
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Yes, the first connection I have, of course, is I'm married to a Filipina. So that actually dates back 28 years. So that's actually the strongest connection. And of course, I have children who are dual citizens. But in terms of business, I actually came here in 2003. I worked for Philip Morris basically here for 10 years. I put together, obviously, I was then president with PMFDC. I then took early retirement 4 years ago, and as George has rightly commented, I'm on various organizations, including Federation of Philippine Industries. One of those organizations for the last 4 years is the British Chamber of Commerce. The British Chamber of Commerce here is, as we like to call it, the leading voice for British business. Our role is to develop UK trade and investment, and actually that goes both ways. And just to sort of summarize where we stand, we have 280 members. We've been growing over the last 4 years. And I just want to stress also, we're both British and non-British. We also have local entities, Globe, Philippine Airlines, along with major companies such as obviously HSBC, Standard Chartered, Unilever, GlaxoSmithKline. And the reason for that is, finally, I'd like to sum up by saying is that the Chamber acts like a networking. It's that basically hub to try and generate business. So I think I've covered the points, I hope.
So there's a good news, sir. As of this month, the Philippines now has access to 4.5 billion euros in export finance from the UK Export Credit Agency. How will this translate to business growth, and how will this affect people in the ground?
So that export financing actually came about from a recent visit of our minister, which is now renamed the Department of International Trade, and that was Dr. Liam Fox. Now, as you may know, we're also in an election at the moment, but when they came here, one of the discussion points with obviously President Duterte, who we met, was how they could actually access and further develop trade. So export financing is to encourage UK companies to come here. The advantage of the UK export financing is, of course, there is a content requirement, but it's actually lower compared to some other countries. It's actually 50%. So what we're hoping to see, and obviously linking that into the infrastructure and economic projects of the Philippines, is to actually help finance or major companies, they can get export financing, as well as small to medium-sized enterprises. That's how the package should work.
Chris, do you happen to know how many British citizens we have here in the Philippines, and vice versa? How many Filipinos do you think there are working in the United Kingdom?
Well, first of all, in the United Kingdom, it's estimated, and I've had various discussions with the Philippine Embassy, at over 200,000.
Wow.
Now you have to appreciate a number of those are now British citizens. They can also be dual citizens. So there's over 200,000. In terms of actually number of British people living here, that's much lower. I don't think the embassy has a specific figure. I'd probably put it somewhere in the region of just above 10,000. However, the number of UK visitors to the Philippines is over 100,000. But of course, that can be people who are also have Philippine origins who are now British citizens. But the strength, yes, there is a lot of visits either way.
Sir, this is a very current issue, and I'm sure a lot of people are concerned about this. British Prime Minister Theresa May raised UK's terror threat from severe to critical after the attack at Manchester Arena during the concert of Ariana Grande, where 22 people have been killed because Islamic State claimed the responsibility for that attack. Meanwhile, here in the Philippines, Maute Group also attacked Marawi City, and President Rodrigo Duterte declared martial law in Mindanao. How do you, in what ways do you think this would affect the ties between the Philippines and UK in terms of investments and trade?
Well, let me first of all take the obviously great shock about Manchester. Manchester is the third largest city in the UK. I've been there many times. It has the largest chamber of commerce. And it's obviously very shocking, and it's very sad, and it's good to see the country coming together and all the individual support. With regard to your specific question, and then of course Mindanao, I should just add actually that at the end of March, in fact 30th and 31st of March, the British Chamber led a very successful trade mission. And what I'd like to say is that despite obviously these issues, both of martial law potentially in Mindanao that's now happening, plus also obviously those terror attacks, I think actually the growth and the ties are very robust, and I think will continue. And I'd just like to say actually there's a great interest, a growing interest, I think that's the key point, in the UK to develop better trade and investment with the Philippines. I see it continuing, and of course we live in a very sad world, but I think the trade will continue, as will the ties, of course.
What do UK companies, sir, see in the Philippines that make companies from the UK invest in our country?
Well, first of all, you have a growing population. It's maybe difficult to estimate exactly what the population is, but I think it's over 110 million. Its growth rate is about 1.5% to 1.8 every year. It's a very literate population. It's well educated. You have a very large growing workforce, which would be very attractive, obviously, in terms of consumer good markets. You have also significant needs. Infrastructure projects are important also to the UK. I mean, obviously, we know of the requirements within the 10-point economic plan of the administration. I think one of the key things, and I just want to emphasize this point, is actually getting UK companies to know of the Philippines. And I think in that respect, I have to give all credit, A, to your embassy, because you have a trade and investment component in the UK and London, and also to our ambassador, who's been here 4 years, Asif Ahmed. He's due actually to leave end of July. And that's done a lot to raise the profile. And that gets companies interested, and obviously if they can then do business, the economy is growing. You have one of the highest growth rates in the world. So combine that with your population, combine those sectors, it's a very interesting market.
As a follow-through question of Rach, what do you think would be the great industries that UK companies would be able to establish here in the Philippines?
Well, if you go back, they've already established some great companies here, right? I mean, Unilever is one, Shell, I think if I go through and I try and link it to the Philippines for a second, I think that there is a lot that can be offered in terms of the infrastructure projects. Let's just talk first of all about airports. Example, at Manila Airport or Ninoy Aquino Airport, you already have a UK company that's called NATS, N-A-T-S, which helps actually trying to see how it can help with the traffic flow. In Cebu, you already have UK companies involved in terms of design and production. So I think UK companies can assist in terms of engineering. They can assist in the small to medium size in software. And let's not forget actually also the retail sector. You mentioned before there's 200,000 Filipinos. UK products are now getting better known here. And therefore there's a large market for that as well.
And on the other side, meaning to say what the Philippines can offer the UK, what products are these?
Well, I think if you look at I'll do it in two areas. First of all, let's talk about investment. There's a very strong investment that started from Philippine companies. Let's not forget there are Philippine companies already in the UK. I'm actually a director of the Philippine National Bank. The Philippine National Bank was the first Philippine bank to have established in the UK. Secondly, last 2 years, we've had Andrew Tan's company buying White and Mackay, which is a Scottish distillery. And then Mondanison bought corn, which is actually a meat substitute product. So this is Philippine companies now investing in the UK. The other thing which I think is attractive to the UK is obviously the Philippine products. You also have technical skills. We have, of course, education that I think is a lot to offer in terms of combinations. And in terms of the products, let's not forget we're all covered under the GSP Plus, which is the trade agreement, which allows obviously tariff advantage of Philippine products into the UK. I mean, you have great fruit products, you have great agricultural products. The question is getting them to the market.
No, but you're talking about the trade relations between, or trade agreements between the UK and the Philippines. Do we have any special trade agreement right now, like in the case of Japan and the Philippines,
No.
Korea and the Philippines,
That's
or
a good
even
question.
ASEAN?
We're
Yeah.
covered still under the EU. And the EU has what they call GSP Plus, which as actually the Philippines has benefited from, and the UK is one of the key markets. Obviously going forward, and this is going to be a key discussion point vis-a-vis our exit from Europe,
Brexit, yeah.
which is obviously the media is called Brexit. Brexit, which was actually the vote in almost a year ago. I think it was the 24th of June last year. So that's going to be one of the key things to be negotiated. And once we have exited, then of course we have to have a separate trade agreement with countries such as the Philippines. And that will occur.
Well, at this point, we need to have a station break. Sa amin pong pagbabalik, makakasama pa rin natin si British Chamber of Commerce Philippines Chairman Mr. Chris Nelson. Please stay tuned.